I'm delighted to bring forward this debate on Zoe's Law and melanoma cancer in memory of my constituent Zoe Panay, after whom this law is named. Zoe died of skin cancer in May 2020 at the age of just 26 after having an unusual mole removed at a private beauty clinic. Zoe had trained to become a carer before finding a rewarding role as an assistant to the radiographer and CT department in St Mary's Hospital in Newport in my constituency of the Isle of Wight. She was the mother of 2 boys, Theo J and Tobias. On the night of the 3rd of April 2020, Zoe went home from work feeling poorly. By 11:30 that evening, she had been admitted back to where she worked at St Mary's Hospital, where it was discovered that Zoe was in the late stages of cancer. Biopsy results 4 days later found that the melanoma cancer, which had started on the mole of her back, had spread to her lymph nodes, liver, bone marrow, pelvis and spleen. And very sadly, she survived after that biopsy just another 55 days. Over the course of 2 years prior to her death, Zoe had raised numerous concerns with GPs about the unusual mole on her back. She had been told on multiple occasions that there was nothing to be concerned about, and after being advised to see a beauty clinic to have the mole removed, staff again raised no concerns about the removal of that mole. And tragically, the act of removing that mole, it was later found, probably caused the cancer to grow and spread more rapidly. Zoe's family, and especially her mum, Eileen Punter, who I pay tribute to in this debate, have campaigned tirelessly since then to raise awareness of melanoma cancer and to ensure that others do not have to go through the same pain. And there are 2 suggestions I will make to the Minister in due course in this speech. By way of background, malignant melanomas, the 5th most commonly diagnosed cancers in the UK, and there are thought to be some 111,000 people living with malignant melanomas in this country. 16,700 approximately cases are diagnosed every year, and about 2,300 people die every year from this cancer. This should not be the case, because the good news is, since the 1970s, the 5-year survival rate from cancers of this type have increased from 52% to about 90%, so 9 out of 10, especially if they're caught early. I happily give it.
Well, and I congratulate him on raising this subject. As he knows, I had a stage 3 melanoma, and I was told that I'd have a 40% chance of living a year. But the science has moved on very dramatically in the nearly 4 years since then. My biggest anxiety is that we don't have enough histopathologists, we don't have enough pathologists, and people are getting their results slowly. There aren't enough dermatologists in the country, and lots of GPs are simply not trained in recognising potentially malignant melanomas fast enough. Don't we need to do far more to make sure that this cancer is fully understood, it can kill, and don't we need to make sure that we have enough staff in the NHS to be able to treat?
I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his intervention, and several of those points I'm going to follow up, but I'm delighted to see that he's one of the many people who have survived malignant melanomas. The point that I was going to make there was that had Zoe's mole been diagnosed early, stage 1 or 2 especially, but possibly even stage 3, as the Honourable Member for the Right Honourable Member from the Rhondda points out, she may well have survived. And just before I come to some of those suggestions, these melanomas are a specific concern on the Isle of Wight, because we have the highest rates of skin cancer. I'll happily give way if he wants to take it.
First of all, commend the Honourable Gentleman for the Isle of Wight for his assiduous attention to his constituents and for the family that bereaved, and certainly by his words that the Honourable Gentleman put forward, we all recognise that he is deeply concerned and compassionate, and we thank him for that. Can I just gently encourage the Honourable Gentleman, and perhaps the Minister might take note of this as well? In Northern Ireland, there's been a new mole mapping and melanoma service such as those introduced by my local South Eastern Trust, which is a nurse-led 2-year pilot project that offers an advanced melanoma technique for specific patients identified by the clinical team as being at higher risk of developing melanoma skin cancer. And that should be a standard, I would suggest, for everyone in my trust area, but not just there, but everywhere else, and not to be a postcode lottery. Would the Honourable Gentleman be perhaps interested in that pilot scheme? And maybe if so, maybe the Minister would take note. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Member from Strangford for yet another excellent intervention, and I completely agree with what he's saying. And in fact, let me come to those points just now. The Isle of Wight is a specific hotspot for skin cancer. I think it has the worst skin cancer rates in the United Kingdom, primarily for 4 factors. Firstly, we have a very white population still, and the paler your skin, the more likely you are to develop melanomas. Secondly, we have an aging population, and melanomas are cumulative. Thirdly, we have a very outdoors lifestyle on the island, so golf and sailing and a lot of community activity, a lot of gardening. And so for the Isle of Wight's retirement community especially, to be out in the sun, age 60, age 70, especially if you're doing an activity like sailing, where you have, it's very harsh on the skin because you've got the interaction of sun and water, this encourages melanomas. Fortunately, we have one of the best dermatology centres in Britain, in Newport's Lighthouse Clinic, and I thank the doctors and staff there. They do an excellent job. And in fact, I've been to the Lighthouse Centre myself in the last couple of years, and I know what a great job they do. The NHS long-term plan, or in the NHS long-term plan, Mr Deputy Speaker, the government has committed that the proportion of cancers diagnosed as stage 1 and 2 will rise from about half now to 3/4 of all cancer patients, meaning that some 55,000 more people every year should survive cancer for at least 5 years after their first diagnosis. And clearly there are pilot schemes in various parts of the country that are trying to improve the case with skin cancer and melanomas. One option to improve this still further would be, and on the island we're calling it Zoe's Law, but effectively it would be a change in practice within the NHS. And we're doing this obviously in memory of Zoe, and her family are doing it. Eileen, her mum, is doing it in memory of Zoe. Would require all moles and all skin tags removed from the body to be tested for melanoma cancer. I'm not expecting an off-the-cuff answer from the Minister on this point, but I would like very much for the Minister to be able to write to me so I can pass on her comments to Eileen, to Zoe's family about this. And if that can't be done now, I'd like to know why, if possible, from the Minister, Mr Deputy Speaker, but also what more could be done in future, because there are still thousands of people dying from this every year who should not need to be, because these cancers, skin cancers, kill you more slowly than many other cancers, and they're more treatable certainly than cancers such as lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, etc. Eileen, Zoe's mum, said that Zoe thought of everyone for herself. And when Zoe was dying, she said, actually, the most important thing is that other people don't have to go through this, because she's left 2 young kids. And I think this idea of testing all removed moles and removed tags, skin tags, is potentially a very popular one. A petition started by the family has now reached some 35,000 signatures. And I'll quote Tanya Blaker, who's the president of the British Association of Dermatologists, a point made by the Honourable Member for the Rhondda, who's recommended that all skin lesions, even if removed for cosmetic reasons, as Zoe's was done, should be sent for histopathological testing, if I pronounce that correctly, to confirm that they are benign. Because if they're not benign, as they were in Zoe's case, then by taking off a lesion or a mole of some kind, especially if it is the type which is deep-rooted in the skin, and I had this explained to me on Friday by Mr. Ashton, who's one of our consultant dermatologists on the Isle of Wight, is that sometimes innocent-looking moles can be sometimes the most deadly because they look quite benign on the surface, but underneath they're not, and they're malignant, and they hide a melanoma. I would also urge the government to set out further plans how we can raise awareness about moles, because this is something relatively easy to do. And if I understand correctly, again, nurse training and GP training, especially in sunnier parts of the country, so along the south coast in Cornwall and Devon and places like the Isle of Wight and Hampshire, this could be exceptionally valuable. And I do... Yes, please.
Because often, if you're a single person, you will never see the back of your head, but a hairdresser will, and quite often they're the people who could spot melanoma.
It's a very good point, because he reminds me of the point that Mr. Ashton was telling me on Friday, which is not only hairdressers but dentists, because dentists spend a lot of time looking at people's faces and could potentially help to spot these things as well. So this is an education process, and Eileen, Zoe's mum, spends a lot of her time trying to get this education process going, because she doesn't want other people's families to suffer as hers have done. At stage 1, a small and localised cancer, a melanoma, there's a 97% survival rate for 5 years, which is extraordinarily high. By contrast, 76% survive when stage 2 melanomas are discovered. 58% survive stage 3, one of which is the honourable member for the Rhondda there. But by the time that cancers have spread from the skin to lymph nodes to bone marrow to other parts of the body, the survival stage is only, or the survival rate is only 15%, and sadly Zoe was one of those people who didn't survive because her survival rates were so low, because despite her worry, despite her visits to the GP, despite the fact that she had that removed, that cancer had been spreading all the time in her body. So in summing up, I would respectfully ask the Minister, Mr. Deputy Speaker, can she write to me please to explain what is the potential to ensure that we have 100% testing of all moles to see if they are melanomas, to see if they are cancerous, to see if they require further treatment. So some of the 2,300 and the exact figure I think was 2,000, I'll just put it on the record to be quite valuable, 2,341 people who died of the disease each year, or certainly did last year. A much higher proportion of those people will survive, one of which would be my constituent, Zoe. And I sum up by paying tribute again to Zoe's family, and especially her mum, for the great work that she's doing. To ask the Minister if she will respond, not only on the issue about testing for melanomas, but also about a broader education, both for GPs, hairdressers, dentists and nurses, so that they are better able to spot these cancerous moles before they can spread. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And can I commend my honourable friend for securing this debate and for telling us Zoe's story so powerfully this evening. A truly heartbreaking story of a young mum, just 26, with so much life ahead of her. It was harder to hear still because Zoe did the right thing and asked her GP about her mole. Yet her skin cancer was not diagnosed until too late, so late she died just 55 days later. So can I also pay tribute to Zoe's family, including Zoe's mum, Eileen, who've campaigned to stop other people going through what they have gone through, and Zoe herself. And when I looked earlier this evening, over 34,000 people had signed their petition. Like Zoe's family as Cancer Minister, I want to stop people going through what they have been through. I want us to do better at preventing cancer, at diagnosing it and treating it. While we cannot remove the risk of skin cancer in its entirety, we can raise awareness of the things that increase your risk and help people take steps to protect themselves. Most skin cancers are caused by exposure to the sun. Getting sunburnt increases your risk, especially getting sunburnt as a child. Using sunbeds increases your risk too, and you're at greater risk if you have fair skin. And as my honourable friend told us, the lovely sunshine of the island he represents has its downsides, as well as, in fact, the healthy outdoor life that he described. As well as raising awareness of risks, we need to raise awareness of early signs and symptoms, and then what to do. This we in government are doing. So, for instance, the NHS Help Us Help You campaign has used TV advertising, social media and regional press to get the message out to people to get worrying signs checked out. But we know some people delay getting a check, and that campaign has particularly sought to overcome those fears. If you're worried, it's always better to get checked out. Most people will get the all clear, but the sooner you get a check, the better, because an early diagnosis improves your chances of successful treatment. Now, I know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that Zoe did the right thing and did ask her GP, which brings me to the importance of accurate diagnosis. For Zoe's specific case, there has been a full investigation locally, and I know the findings have been acted on. Specifically, teledermatology is now being offered by all GPs on the Isle of Wight and being made increasingly available across the NHS. This involves a specialist medical photographer taking a very detailed photograph of a skin lesion to check it for signs of cancer. Now, that is a step on the path to either having more tests to confirm if you do or don't have cancer, or being given the all clear that no further tests are needed. Also, adding to the role of teledermatology, almost 1.5 million of our elective recovery funding has been allocated to 7 cancer alliances to pilot self-referral for cancer symptoms, including skin cancer symptoms. Now, I heard my honourable friend's argument for Zoe's law to require all moles or skin tags removed to be tested for melanoma. I also heard that he said he was not indeed expecting to get an answer here and now, which I appreciate, and I can assure him that I will take his argument away and I will look into it and I will write to him with a full response on that proposal. I will also take away the suggestion from him and from other honourable members about looking at the broader education of other people who might be able to spot something which might be an early sign of a skin cancer, recognising that you might not see your back or the back of your head, for instance, and that indeed there may be opportunities to look at wider education, and for sure, of course, raising the awareness overall, as I was talking about earlier, of skin cancers and what to do if you have a sign or a symptom, and raising awareness of those signs and symptoms will indeed mean that more people around will know what to look out for. Yes, I'm very happy to give way to the honourable member.
I commend the Minister for a very positive answer and what the Honourable Lady is saying in relation to what's going to happen across some 9 centres where the hotspots perhaps are in the United Kingdom. I in the intervention and the Honourable Gentleman referred to the pilot scheme that we're having in my trust area, the South Eastern Hospital Trust, which is a very, very specific one, which seems to be having some good results. I always believe, Mr Deputy Speaker, Minister, I would believe that the opportunity to exchange ideas that we have is good for us all. It helps us to know what you're doing here. I think, Minister, might help you to know what we're doing back home, perhaps.
Well, I very much thank the honourable member for his intervention, and I will totally look into the suggestion that he made in his area, because actually, one of the good things about the NHS and across the United Kingdom is that there are all sorts of fantastic things going on in pockets, and one of the best things we can do is find out what's working somewhere and then take it, spread that best practice more widely. So I'll indeed look into what he suggests. I thank him for that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what I can also say is that we are now seeing the most incredible advances in how we diagnose as well as how we treat cancer. An example of this is the NHS Gallery trial, which looks for blood markers to identify cancer risk. It can identify signs of over 50 cancers, and the trial has got 140,000 participants. So I should say that we should in no way limit our sights to what can be achieved here and now. But back to the here and now. The crucial thing here and now is early diagnosis, which much improves the prospects for successful treatment. That's what I know Zoe's family want, for those who do have cancer, to get an early diagnosis so that they have the chance to survive and live their lives as so sadly Zoe didn't. That's something I want to do. I want fewer people to get cancer, those who do have cancer to be diagnosed earlier, and in turn to be treated successfully so they can live their lives to the full. Thank you.